Holy City Center Radio. It is episode 401, and I am your host, Christian Sanger. Today is Friday, August 15th, 2025. Yes, we are 401 episodes into this Holy City Center Radio experiment. Whether you have been here before, this is your first time, I greatly appreciate you listening. And if you have a moment and you haven't done so already, please, whatever platform you're listening on, go ahead, rate, review, like, subscribe, all the things that'll help get this out to more people. So I am back in the Holy City after my vacation. If you listened to the last episode, you know I was in New England with my family. We took a trip to New Hampshire and had a blast. It is nice to be back, but I am definitely missing them. And, certainly wish that I was, still with them. It would have been fun to bring them all down here with me. Or it would have been nice to extend my vacation because the weather was, a little toasty at times, but not as toasty as it is down here. That's for sure. I hope you're all staying cool. And I hope you have an amazing weekend ahead. If you need some plans, go to holycitycenter.com/calendar and you can find out what is going on around town this weekend and beyond. All right, without any further delay, let's get into the latest news. Charleston City Council member Caroline Parker, who was first elected in 2021 to represent the James Island area, this past Wednesday said she would not run for re-election. Folks, that is amazing news. We'll get to why that is in a moment. Parker, who was new to politics when elected 4 years ago, has had a somewhat contentious role on council, as Charleston City Paper put it, and that is putting it lightly. Particularly, she made a lot of noise in her first 2 years serving when John Tecklenburg was the mayor. She says she is not running to serve again because of family priorities. She is currently the only woman on City Council. However, two other James Island women, Leslie Scardon and Deanna Miller, have filed to run for that seat. So there's a very good chance, unless someone else joins the race, that we will still have at least one woman on City Council. Filing closes on Monday, by the way, at noon for the November 4th election. So yes, for those who've listened to this podcast for a while, or if you just are hip to Charleston news, you may remember Caroline Parker when she was running for city council. And you may remember some of the things I said at the time, and also when she got on city council, which was that she seemed to really just be running because she hated masks. This is 2021. There were still mask mandates at certain things because of the pandemic, of course, including at city council meetings. She was just so anti-mask. She was one of those people. I made jokes about people as well who ran for school boards, and people like Parker who ran for city council who had no history in politics, which is not to say that people who have no prior history can't be good in their roles. But a lot of these folks seem to have been radicalized by something during the pandemic, whether it was the whole mask thing, whether it was vaccine mandates, people, this whole. And then, of course, we've also seen blowback on the LGBTQ community, especially trans folks. And it seemed like a lot of people were just running for these culture war issues. And those that were specifically running because of masks and vaccines, it was like, not only did they have no history in politics, but they weren't particularly smart as it relates to politics. I'm not saying they aren't smart people, but they just didn't really seem to get how politics works, let alone the ins and outs of serving in that role, not just playing politics, but actually like rules, like how things should be done. And we saw a lot of instances early on in her tenure where she clearly didn't really understand the rules or expectations. Because she refused to wear a mask, she had this big glass partition like on three sides of her seat at city council, which looked ridiculous. And there's a few times where she didn't understand the rules. There's certain times where you can and can't talk. There's certain procedures when you want to introduce something, so on and so forth. And there are many times like fellow city council members had to kind of be like, hey, that's not how it's done. And we saw a lot of that with the Charleston County School Board. We've detailed all the nonsense and mistakes and, if it wasn't so sad, the hilarity behind how incompetent they were and just didn't know how to properly do things. And Parker was certainly one of those. Now, she's been a lot quieter, at least in terms of stuff like this that makes headlines. Since William Cogswell became mayor. I don't think that's why she did. I think it's because her little pet project, this whole mass thing, is over. Like her whole whatever radicalized her, which again really seemed like that was like what she was running on. Uh, there was like nothing for her to really whine and cry about, and it. This is good news. Before she came up with some other pet project that was the only thing she cared about. It didn't seem that she necessarily cared about being in this role outside of, again, there was just a group of people who during the pandemic decided I should be the type of person who runs for office because I'm mad about vaccines or masks or, LGBTQ books in schools and all this other stuff. So it is very good that she is leaving. I don't know of anything of significance that she did while on the council. To be fair, I do not watch every meeting. I do not read every story, mostly because city council tends to be extremely boring, which thankfully it is usually good when it's boring because that means there's not something crazy going on. So I'm glad she kind of faded into the background and didn't take on some other ridiculous project, but very, very happy to hear that she is leaving city council. Please, Caroline, I'm so happy for you to spend time with your family. Please continue to stay with them. Politics just isn't for you. Thanks for serving on city council. Good effort. I think that experiment's over. Another politician, although technically they're not in any official role at the moment, but a former politician who should probably not be running for governor, but decided to announce that they're running for governor, is Mr. William Mullins McLeod Jr. If that name sounds familiar, he was a two-time Charleston County Democratic Party chairman, and he announced last week that he is going to be running for governor of South Carolina. He is currently the only Democrat who has announced. He is a prominent Charleston-based lawyer. However, why am I saying he probably shouldn't be running? He has a political background, and we know a lot of lawmakers that run. It's because he was the gentleman who was arrested on the Battery a little while back, where there was speculation that he wasn't necessarily in his right frame of mind, whether police believed it had to do with narcotics. It could have been a mental health thing. Who knows? But regardless of, not that an arrest necessarily means you can't run for office, but this was a pretty recent arrest. And to make matters worse, the video from that arrest was made public and local news picked it up, and it is not good. It is filled with profanity, which, oh no, I swear too, it's not that big of a deal, but it's a little bit more than just that. There was some violent talk. There was some slurs that were used. It is not good. It's about 35 minutes on this video where he is basically just rambling and screaming at officers the entire time. So what happened was he was arrested in the spring. And yes, this video, he's screaming incoherently. He's disparaging perceived adversaries and touting that he was going to be, he had political aspirations. And it's just a lot of rambling, and it just doesn't look good. At the time, by the way, he was charged with public disorderly conduct and was booked at the Sheriff Al Cannon Detention Center. Now, the South Carolina Democratic Party has said that they don't think he should run. He should drop out. I am of that same mindset. So yes, we do go after Democrats on this podcast when they do ridiculous crap like this. I have no issue with calling out the Democrats when they do something wrong. It's just in this state, there's so many more Republicans. They tend to make more news, of course. There's just more of them. But this guy is a Democrat, and I do not want him to run for governor, and I will not be voting for him, regardless if he's the only Democratic candidate. So anyway, he claims that he's going to hold a press conference in the future that is going to address what he calls the legal action and expected resolution stemming from his unlawful arrest. Again, that's his words. He also claims that portion of the video were released just to damage his candidacy and reputation. Well, buddy, the video is the video. It's not edited in a way to make you look bad. You just look bad, and yeah, maybe someone did say, hey, to local news, you really need to see this video of this guy. Or maybe local news asked for the video now that he is running for governor. At the time, you don't always get video from arrests if it's someone that there's no real public interest in it. And at the time, he wasn't involved in politics. And so I would imagine perhaps the video just wasn't even requested. But once he announced he's running for governor, that certainly came out. So in this footage, McLeod mentions names such as former President Barack Obama, Attorney General Alan Wilson, President Donald Trump, Charlie Condon, and Charleston businessman Ben Navarro. Specifically, as he was talking about Wilson, who is a Republican, current Attorney General. He's running for governor as well. He threatened in the video to, quote, kick his teeth in, and then continued rambling on. So there's the violent threat there. In any event, as I said, South Carolina Democratic Party has encouraged him to drop out. However, he's already said he is not going to. We'll see if that continues. He could change his mind, but as of this recording, he said he is not dropping out. And like I said, he has a press conference where he's claiming he's going to explain this whole arrest and blah, blah, blah. So we'll see. South Carolina politics, never boring. There's always something going on. But like I said, he needs to drop out. This is not just an arrest, not just that he's saying slurs and making violent threats and, whatever. People make mistakes. Maybe he was on drugs. And if he was, and again, there's been no proof of that. We don't know, okay. Doesn't necessarily mean it could have been a one-time thing. Who knows? But the fact that it was just a few months ago, that's where you start to say, hey, man, like, even if that was just a mistake, have you really, gotten to the bottom of what happened on a personal level? Have you done whatever work you need to do? Do you understand what occurred? And are you remorseful for some of the things you said on that video specifically, or some of your actions? And it just doesn't seem that that's the case based on his, big pushback. It'll be interesting to see what he says at this press conference. But in any event, yes, there is a Democrat running for governor. And yes, I believe he should drop out immediately. All right, to the other side of the aisle, the South Carolina Republican lawmaker who is in jail awaiting trial on charges that he distributed sexual abuse material involving children has resigned his seat in the State House. Yes, we're talking about R.J. May, of course. He submitted a resignation letter. It was dated Thursday, but didn't arrive at the offices of House leadership until Monday morning. So this is last Thursday I'm talking about, and this past Monday. So, what took so long? But thankfully, he has dropped, he's resigned, which he should do. He wrote in part that he's doing this because it's in the best interest of his family and constituents to resign immediately. However, he did not mention the 10 charges he faces, which, by the way, could end up resulting in him being in prison for over a decade. At least that's what prosecutors have suggested if he is convicted. I'm not going to go back into the story. You get the gist of it. It is, sexual abuse material involving children is horrible, obviously, on its face, just what it is. But some of the other stuff and some of the stuff, including children, is just horrific. If you've seen the reports, it's disgusting. It's just unfathomable. There's no need to look into it. Just know if, the stuff that has allegedly been found and, on his computers and things, it's pretty darn bad. And he'll have his day in court, and he can, say he's innocent or, whatever his lawyers and he decide to do. But regardless, this is the right move. He can't, if he's in jail, whether, up until the trial, I don't think he's going to be getting bond or anything. He can't do his job. This was the right move. So thankfully he is out. A little bit later, this should have happened a little bit sooner, I think, but at least he is finally out of the State House. Speaking of horrible people, Dylann Roof, the self-proclaimed white supremacist and the man charged with murder for shooting and killing 9 people during a Bible study at Mother Emanuel Church back in 2015, has been denied his petition for a new trial. Womp, womp. Couldn't have happened to a worse person. So this comes after attorneys for Roof filed a motion back in April to vacate or change his conviction and sentence due to alleged trial counsel failure and also bias from U.S. District Judge Richard Gergel. So in these court documents from the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals, it was recorded that Roof claimed that Judge Gergel had made it known back in 2015 that he wanted to preside over this case. And that caused Roof to claim that this raises questions about the judge being unbiased. So he's basically saying, hey, if this judge really wanted to take over my case, is it because he really wanted to make sure I went to jail? So that's what they were arguing. Thankfully, the court ruled that Roof's claims were based on hearsay and that there was not enough evidence that would constitute, a recusal of Gergel. So that, he's not going to get a new trial based on that. They said that if mere rumor or gossip were sufficient, any party could reject a judge at will. So thankfully, yes, the court made the right ruling here. He will not be getting a new trial based on, the whole Judge Gergel side of things. They're, obviously his lawyers are going to try other things, but as of now, no change. And that is the way it should be. And lastly, before I send you on your way into the weekend, we have an update on those Dockside condos. Remember, downtown, these are the condos that the city made people evacuate because they thought this building's not looking so stable and this could be very, very bad. Well, despite all that, people are purchasing these condos. So and this is despite being unable to move in, because there's been no changes in terms of construction or anything that have happened within this building. But despite that, buyers picked up 7 condominiums in that Dockside building within the last week. And the majority of the sellers unloaded at losses totaling between $500,000 and $1 million. So these poor residents, about 6 months ago, they were told they had to evacuate. As I mentioned, it was a city-mandated evacuation, forced them out of their homes, and they were only allowed to bring what they could carry. There was no guaranteed return date, not even like speculation. And despite all that, they still have to pay their mortgages, taxes, homeowners' fees, and any other expenses related to it. So it's already horrible for them. And so some have decided, let's just sell and try to get some money back. But they're losing, as I just mentioned, lots of money on those sales. But perhaps to them, it's worth it to just get rid of this headache and try to move on. So since that evacuation, at least 19 of the 133 units at Dockside have either been sold or put on the market. So some are still out there. The prices, and by the way, these are 1 and 2 bedroom condominiums. The prices that they've sold for range from $90,000 to $120,000. And for, just to kind of put that in perspective, pre-evacuation, purchase prices for those same units were $430,000 and upwards of $1.125 million. So yes, they're taking huge losses on these purchases and sales, I should say. Included in those buyers, a group of Charleston investors who are under the name Dockside Acquisition LLC have closed on 6 of the condos, and they claim there's another dozen or so in the works. So it's one of those things where someone like that can come in, buy these units at a price that is way, way cheaper than it would have been, and then hope that they can turn that around once this building, perhaps the building is secured. Whatever they're worried about, about a potential collapse or whatever it is, it'll be fixed. No one will have to worry anymore. And now there's going to be these nice places that used to sell for upwards of over $1 million that these people can now unload for for a nice profit based on what they paid for it. Now, of course, the rub there is how long is it going to be before they can try to unload them? But the main focus here for me is these poor residents, again, forced out of their homes, weren't allowed to bring everything. They had some opportunities to go back and take some things out. They've had to find new places to live. It's been 6 months with no real news. I mean, there's lawsuits and things going on, of course, which is kind of hindering any, progress. And now some of them have just decided, I want to be done with this, and they're losing so much money. It really, really sucks for them. And, I wish the best for them, that whatever their next, move is as it relates to a home is much more successful if they're the type of folks looking to sell, flip something or whatever, or just something more comfortable where they don't have to worry that they're going to be kicked out. Just a sad story, and hopefully we'll have a resolution for everybody, as good of a resolution as can be expected in this type of situation. And that'll do it for this edition of Holy City Center Radio. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you to Lindsay Marie Collins with LMC Soundsystem for producing this and every episode of this show. And thank you to Tyler Boone, whose music you hear in each and every episode. I will be back with you next week. I'm already looking forward to it. But until then, good night and good luck.